intimidated me the most. And then, having these kids come to you, but that's what we're here for. I think we've all been there. We want to make sure it's an easy transition for everyone.
Okay, well, I sure appreciate it. It's just been great. I'm looking forward to your workshop here too.
Well, I think we're good to get started, in all honesty. I mean, if we have some people that trickle in here, that's fine. But with only a half hour, I say let's get things moving. This is If I Could Go Back. It's an open forum, so it's going to kind of be the same conversation we've been having the past couple of minutes. But more or less, we can tell you some of our background, what we encountered, the issues that we encountered, and how we overcame them. And then we want to hear from you guys. Any last time questions? This is probably your last chance here for New Coaches Academy. If there's anything else we can answer today, we're happy to. And then certainly if you have questions later, we're all open to answer. So I'll start with some introductions. My name is Chad Chenowith. I'm the head coach at Bishop Dwenger High School. And our program, we're a very small program up until about probably 2012. I did some major recruiting trying to build the team up, and we were very blessed to continue to build. We've won some sectional titles now, even though, like I said, about a decade ago, we were only maybe 5-6 kids. So certainly there is room to grow and some different things to try out. So Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm from Bishop Knoll. This is going to be going into my 6th year coaching. Bishop Knoll, from what I hear from the old people, was really active in the 20th century. But we're in the 20th, but then it died out. So we restarted this program about 5 years ago, and we've kind of built up. Some was coached by myself, and we went from about 6 people our first year to we average about 35 to 40 since then. So I get being overwhelmed by numbers and you being by yourself.
So I see we have a few more people coming into the call here. Mainly, like I said, this is an open forum. We're going to discuss some things from our background as coaches, the problems we encountered early on, kind of give you our background on what we would change. And then the second half, we really just open it up to any questions you guys may have about that. I know for me, the biggest thing that I encountered, I felt intimidated to try anything. I know for a while my head coach I worked with originally was very hands-off, didn't really get involved much. We maybe would do 2-3 meets a year, which was fine. But when they were being offered, relatively local, we could have done maybe 9 or 10. He didn't really want to do much with the program. So when I first started, I really was scared to try anything, and I think that was my biggest problem to overcome, was being willing to try to go to different meets. I remember vividly the first time I ever had a kid double enter. We'd never done that up until probably 2013, actually have a kid enter in 2 events. And I thought that was revolutionary. And then now our kids do it all the time. So I think the one major thing as I thought about what would I would do when I go back is I would experiment a lot more. I wished I'd take more risks early on, try some different things early on, because really you can't really fail at anything. You try it out and you learn from it. But there's a lot of potential if you're willing to try some different things.
Yeah, and I think just to go a little bit off what Chad said, my experience, I can still remember back when I first started the program, our first year, we were just terrible. I had 0 experience in speech and debate. I didn't do it in high school. I didn't do it for most of my teaching career. So I was learning with the kids. So every day before every tournament, it was like, we're on basically a learning expedition today. And so I think the first few tournaments, just go in, have an open mind, try things, enjoy it, and you're going to learn the activity. And you can learning curve pretty quickly once you if you go in with that open mind and you're willing to try things.
Something else I wished I had done more of too was reaching out. I think I felt embarrassed to ask what I perceived at the time to be what I thought were stupid questions. I wouldn't know the difference between events, or I'd wonder, well, what's this acronym stand for? And I think as I got to know people more and more, and I realized this is a really friendly atmosphere, I felt I could go out on a limb more with people and ask them questions. Michael Yakey's on here. He was one of those I went to. And he was very understanding of my questions, very friendly, and that's part of what's retained me in this organization is people like Michael. who were friendly enough to answer my questions, and I hope we can fall in that same role for everybody else too. Our email is available on the website. I'll probably leave it here in the chat box before we leave too. If you ever happen to have a question at a random time, we love to see other people involved in this event. We're happy to help you out.
And just to piggyback on that, as a new coach, I was asking people what I thought were dumb questions all the time. People were very helpful. But the other thing that I've noticed the past couple of years is my students on my team also noticed when I had good relationships with other coaches, and especially as a single coach, when I'm off judging or in a tab room, my students didn't feel so alone because they kind of felt by proxy that there are other coaches in the tournament, which I know will be different this year, but that they felt if in an emergency they could go to, if that makes sense. So they didn't quite feel quite as unmoored, because when they were looking around, they could see like Dakota, they could see coaches from like Chesterton and Munster, and they knew that I had good relationships with them. So they were kind of like by proxy, they felt better when they were alone.
Especially for those of us who are new coaches with small programs, we get put into the judging pool very heavily. And it's sort of backwards, because we should be, in my humble opinion, we should have the veterans out judging a lot more. But in any case, it's a little bit like that old, it takes a village to raise a child kind of thing, because when I would go out judging a lot in the first 10 years that I was coaching, I would always say, now, you know who Mr. McKenzie is, and you know who Mr. Stutzman is, and you know who, various coaches are that you can go to if you have a problem. And that's also a very big community thing. We have a very strong ethos of community-based learning in this activity.
To go off what Michael just said there, one of the first experiences I had is I was still an assistant coach at this point, and 6 of my kids had found out what Congress was and wanted to do it, to which I replied, I have no idea what that is, but I was open to try it out. And I think that's the same spirit that drives many of these new coaches we have here. You may not know a lot about the program, but for the kids, you want to make it work. And I think that's certainly something we all share. 2 of our rival coaches in Carroll and Northrop, their coaching staffs actually both sent out an emissary. One of their coaches, actually their head coach of both of them, came to our school to teach our kids how to do Congress. This is not like most sports you may hear about where we're highly competitive against each other. If anything, it's us trying to teach them. We are doing our very best to create confident speakers, better speakers, and we're all working together for that. And if your kids are better speakers, they'll make my kids better speakers, and we're all better for it at the end of the day, no matter what size trophy people seem to go home with.
The late, great Bob Britton did the same thing for us at Westview. Probably my 4th or 5th year when I was at Westview, he came from Columbia City all the way to LaGrange County, 3 or 4 weeks in a row, brought a couple of students with him, and had mock Congress chambers with us. And it was a period of time I'll never forget, because Bob went out of his way from coaching his own kids to coaching me and coaching my students.
And don't feel like all your questions have to be based on, and I hope you will reach out to us, not only the board members, but to fellow coaches in your sectional. Your questions don't always have to be based on rules or procedure or events. A lot of times there's a social aspect as well. It's just like, hey, I don't know how to navigate this, or I'm getting overwhelmed with this, or is there an easier way to do this where I don't feel like, so stressed out? Dealing with your administration can be a thing too. I'd like to think we're all friends involved in this together, and we're all trying to, make the most of the situation whenever it comes up, especially this year.
I just last night called a coach up and said, I have a lot of kids who want to do Congress. Can you virtual in and help me, because I'm not as good at it as you are? And the response was, absolutely.
So we're about at the halfway point here with about 15 minutes left. I think we're all okay if we go over a little bit. That's certainly fine. For the other coaches on here, are there any specific questions you'd like to have answered now in the small group format?
It's Jessica Fehrenbacher. I have a question. One of the things that I'm struggling with is trying to find the right pieces for the kids, and that fine line between I want to help them, but I also want them to take the initiative and find pieces that speak to them. And I guess
Sure.
I'm looking for resources, because you start looking at all these different websites and trying to just maneuver that. I don't know if anybody has any advice on that. It's just, it kind of is like you're going down a rabbit hole and trying to find stuff.
I can address that one first. Full disclosure, it was a lot easier when we started out, at the risk of sounding overly proud, we have 40 entries every year at sectionals. So I'm usually dealing with like 30 some kids I'm finding scripts for. And I can certainly appreciate where you're coming from. You seem like you're drowning in all the possibilities that are out there, and you don't want to let the kid down. You want them to have the best piece possible. I really do think it's a kid-to-kid basis. I've had some kids, especially my in the early years, or if they're starting out, I will get to know their personality first. I hate to just hand a script to a kid until I know them. So a lot of times before I even have them compete, I just sit down and talk to them and get to know them one-on-one. It's hard to give a script to a kid until you know their personality. I oftentimes will ask a series of questions to find their event too. I'll say, first off, do you want to go scripted or memorized? And they'll usually give me an answer I work with. I say, do you want to be funny or serious? And if they give me that, I keep prodding. What's your sense of humor? What issues do you feel strongly about? A big question I typically will ask, is there any place we don't go? Is there any type of drama that you're not willing to do? And that could be for religious reasons, personal reasons. If abuse pieces are off the table, I respect that immediately. I will never, ever push a kid. There's the moral reasons not to do it, but certainly the ethical reasons as well. You never want to push a kid beyond their boundaries in that sense. But to better directly answer that question, I don't try to overwhelm it. I try to maybe pick 1, 2, or 3 pieces I can give a kid, and then I let them pick from there. If a kid is really passionate, they may pick something, but until they get to know speech and debate, they may try to find something that doesn't really fit with performance-based. It may be a great script, but not a great script for speech and debate. And there is a clear difference there. So the short answer, I would try to find maybe 2 scripts, 3 at most, to run past them and get their thoughts on them. If they shoot all 3 down, you have a better idea of what that kid can perform, what they want to perform. I've talked too much. I'm going to pass it off.
Jessica, were you saying you don't have resources available, or are you saying just a matter of fitting the piece to the student?
It's a little bit of a combination. We've only met with the kids once, and I try to do an individual sit down with the kids. I know a lot of the kids since they're classmates of my daughter, so I have a little bit of knowledge of their personalities. Our program had kind of floundered for many years, so we do have some older pieces, like, saved over the years, and I've let the kids look through those. But then just trying to find, whether it's websites or I know I went to one of the workshops, Christy Thomas, and I know she writes pieces, just trying to find where to direct the kids and where I should be looking. And then sometimes it becomes an issue of, well, how much, do you pay for these pieces? There's just some confusion on that front.
I know Kevin wants to jump in here too, and I want to respect that, but I want to say very quickly, if you email me, I will send you a starter pack of humors, dramas, poetry, prose, duos, things like that. The last session at this conference used to be sharing cuttings. I mean, back in the early 2000s, we would bring in buckets of printed pieces and then share them with new coaches. But of course, digitally now, it's so much easier to share so much more. So this is an open invitation to anybody. I've got a bunch of these files from when I was running that workshop when we moved from paper to digital. As far as paying for pieces goes, I tend to avoid that myself. That's really a matter of discretion. I often ask students what they like. And apart from Monty Python, if they like it, almost anything can be made into a decent piece. I just have a rule about no American kid doing Monty Python. I'm sorry. That's my bright line. You're not going to do the dead parakeet sketch. You can't do it. Okay. So I'll shut up now and let Kevin talk.
No, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I'll email you.
I was just going to say, and it's piggybacking on Michael's offer, especially my first year or two, especially looking at like HIs, DIs, poetries, duos, those types. I would just, in my little bucket, I only had like 10 choices for the kids. And that's kind of what I rode with. And they were kind of, and they, I'll be honest, they were all like speech geek pieces because
Okay.
they're all about 10 minutes and they don't require a lot of editing. And so until I got comfortable finding other pieces, editing them down, that was kind of what we rolled with. So I wouldn't put pressure on yourself to have to read like 100 resources. Like I felt comfortable just going to my kids and saying, we're new, here are your 10 choices.
Okay, well, and that's another thing too, because, you know, I'll start putting pieces or having books that I think the kids would like, and that's overwhelming too. Like, how do I, you know, cut it down and make it, you know, where it's, you know, that it can fit in the time limit, and then, you know, just learning all those ins and outs of it, where I think that's great advice because, okay, I have it, it's 10 minutes, maybe 2 years from now when I feel more comfortable, you know, then I would feel okay doing that. But, you know, that's great advice.
I can also send you some guidelines on cutting a piece
Okay.
that can get you through. But I also really strongly encourage students to cut their own pieces.
Okay.
What we do is we have a camp every summer. We have a 1-week teen camp, and that is where my interpreters get their new pieces in shape because they know they want to do a cutting from this short story or this novel. You know, they read something in class last year that really turned them on to this particular author. They want to do another cutting from Number of the Stars by John Green or whatever that book is called.
Fault in Our Stars.
Fault in Our
yes,
Stars.
yes.
Thank you. And that's fine. That's fine. You know, they learn so much more when they do the cutting themselves. I truly believe that because, you know, they're forced to pick out what makes that character significant, how that character reveals him or herself to the audience, how the resolution of the conflict, you know, signals the end of the piece and so on. So I think that's really awesome.
I'll resonate what Michael's saying too, is if it's a larger text, I may edit it down to 25 minutes worth of material and then let the kid edit it from there. We've run some novels in the past as prose pieces, and I understand that's a lot to ask a kid to go through. So I may highlight some pieces and then certainly edit some stuff. Sometimes there's language and content I don't want the kid going through to begin with or to see. So oftentimes I'll edit that out so they're not going to see that. I hate to send that home with a kid. We are a Catholic school where we're coming from.
And Roger Moral is too. So we've had the discussion about making sure we're not we can get our point across without certain language. And I want, you know, us to present well as a Catholic school. So we're in the same boat.
And I think it works better with a larger array of judges too. If you can kind of find that golden mean. So far as finding pieces, our school does a variety of things. I try to buy a few new pieces each year, set a budget, you know, bring in a few, and then over the years they start to build up. You can, you know, go through them for different things. But I love the library. We have a great library system here in Allen County. And I'll, you know, get some short stories, copy them, have them available for the kids to look at. But that's time, and I don't know if your school charges you for copies either. If you go in to do it, but if the kids want to use, I sometimes love to run children's literature for prose. So you know, sometimes I'll just pull something out of my daughter's room, and we'll end up running that. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but just give me some background on what we do.
Now I know this is just kind of piggybacking on this, but I know some of the freshmen coming in had asked me about things such as, you know, TED Talks, and you know, they'll send me YouTube videos, and this is kind of the theme I want to go with. I understand it has to be, you know, published pieces. Do you guys run into problems with that? Because just the generation that we're working with, I mean, everything is TikTok, Snapchat. I mean, all of these different formats of them kind of using some of those, I mean, or wanting to incorporate them in, and how do you handle that with the kids?
I think it depends on the event and which you're running it. TED Talks are universally fine for poi. When poi is when you blend drama, prose, poetry, it's a number of formats. There is some dispute right now because I've had this discussion with other coaches. If someone could run a TED Talk as a prose piece, I've seen it happen. It's not necessarily good. I know we ran a TED Talk as a humor piece, and it made it to state. So those would be fine because, again, they're universally available. That fits the rules in the tournament manual. For districts, that could be different. But so far as TikTok, Snapchat, I've not encountered that yet so far as those being used as a source, but you may be at the cutting edge. That may be something we have to address later. I don't know. I'm curious what the other coaches think.
I just thought I feel like that should be readily available, which is why YouTube works. I guess if your Snapchat is public and readily available.
Well, but Snapchats go away too. So
oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with. I'm grumpy when it comes to social media, but basically, as I have any coach has to be able to readily access your thing, or it has to have an ISBN number, right? Is that fair?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So as long as I can readily access it, or it has an ISBN number, then you're okay.
It's also important
state, not district.
I don't want to come in and rock the boat. That's not, the kids are just, well, you know, they'll send me different things. They're like, I'm interested in this or I'm interested in that. And as a first year coach, I want to follow the rules. I don't want to, you know, I would hate to, you know, if we would, you know, make it to state or something like that, which would be wonderful. I wouldn't want them to be disqualified or run into any problems with the rules as far as that go. I'd almost rather kind of play it safe to start and then, you know what I mean?
I do, but I fear if you play it too. That was my concerns. I think I played it way too safe in the early going. Michael and I have both left our emails there. Michael is a former rules chair, and I'm the current rules chair. If you ever have a question and you're not sure, run it past us, and we'll let you know. It's a lot to read the tournament manual. I've had to do it a few times now. Michael, I'm sure you were quite familiar with it back in the day. I'm probably still are now, I would imagine. There haven't been that many changes, so. Just run it past us. I'd be willing for you to try. I don't want you to feel limited, especially when you're trying to get things going.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One important thing that I would add, I think everything you guys have covered is fantastic, and I've stayed kind of quiet because I feel like you've got more of the experience than I do. But one thing about the open availability, you know, as long as it's public, you can use it. It's got to be a text version of it. So like a public documentary, for instance, you can use as a piece, but you have to acquire a text version of that script. You could not just replicate the things that you hear them say. There's a little contention on, you know, does transcribing it and posting it yourself, does that count? And I don't have the answer to that, but you do want to make sure you find the actual text for anything.
That's just for districts though, isn't it?
That's correct. That would only be for districts. I'm in the tournament manual right now. The phrasing is vague on purpose. It says it needs to be publicly available. But to Dakota's point, though, districts, if you're trying to get someone to nationals at that tournament, they have a list of online sources they allow. Other than that, you have to really have your sources available in writing, as Dakota's correct there. But at the state level, for just your regular meets or sectionals, it needs to be readily available, but there's nothing that specifically says it has to be a text.
Yeah, like that's why, like when I first started, they said I should pull all my proses off Moth Radio Hour. So I had the kids listen to Moth Radio Hour and pull the stories they liked off that. But you can't do that for nationals because it's illegal.
Exactly right. And I've pulled some things from Moth as well. Now, the thing with Moth, if you do want to do it for nationals, Moth has published, I think, at least 3 books that have the orations in those books. Okay. So you could get around to that. We try that out.
Cool. Thanks.
We did it. So I get it.
Right on.
I have a question. So as we're starting like the speech part, I guess I'm confused because I know there's all these different categories. What should I start with? Like with my kids, as far as I mean, definitely whatever they're interested in, but yeah, Michael.
That's a good way to make yourself crazy, is to try to do everything.
Okay. Yeah.
I
So
would definitely say start them out with prose, poetry, and scripted duo.
okay.
Prose, poetry, scripted duo.
East Chicago likes extemp. I know that's crazy to
Cool.
say, but
That's
they like
great.
extemp.
No, that's great. I'm an old extemper myself. I love extemp. I think that's
I like
that's
extemp
perfectly
too.
fine. Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely, that's my thing that I did wrong, that I started off, I'm like, do any events you want. As a new person, just pick the events that you think you can be good at coaching.
Yeah.
And then you can eventually expand your repertoire as you get more experience. But
Okay.
yeah, just starting with 5 or 6 events and just telling the students, these are the 5 or 6 events.
All right. So you said prose, poetry, extemp, and what else?
I'd say duo. You know.
Duo. Okay.
Yeah.
You had a lot of info last year, though, too. I think you had extemp and info seemed to be what your kids liked.
Yes.
I'm not telling you what they like, but just from our practices, that's what I remember. You had some kids in discussion, but you're also kids, I think, like the double, so that's not a good one if they like the double. And you had a lot of impromptuers as well. We taught a lot of kids impromptu.
And I think what it may be is that as you start to learn the events, start to judge more of the events, you maybe feel more comfortable, but you really will dictate your own pace. Whatever you think feels comfortable and you want to have a kid in, I'd say go for it. But never put more pressure on yourself than you think you want to have on you. Because at the end of the day, if you burn out, all the kids lose out.
Yep.
I have a question, a follow-up kind of as far as like events go. So my husband is coaching too, and he's doing limited prep. I mean, his big focus because that's what he did in high school and college. And then we have someone that's going to help us do impromptu. And then I'm doing everything else, all the interp and public address events. With extemp, what are they limited to as far as double entering? I know that that's a category, like you have to be careful. We have an extemp kit, some extemp kids who want to double enter. What can they double enter in if they're an extemp?
I made the same mistake myself, and I actually had my sectional rep come back and change my entries for me and tell me that. If they're an extemp, they can do the following.
Okay.
Impromptu.
Okay.
Original oratory.
Okay.
Informative speaking.
Okay.
To my knowledge, that's all they can double in. Now, I'm pretty certain that's right, but I've not been speeching all summer. If someone remembered something I forgot, I'm open to hearing it. But I do believe those are the only 3 things that they can double in, and they cannot double in the other extemp at all. They have to be in one extemp, and then those 3 events are what they can double in.
Okay. Because our daughter does extemp. She did it in middle school, and she's going to do US, but she's kind of been interested in something else. So I thought she could do OO, but I didn't know about the informative might be a good way to go. So, okay.
And in that respect, I'd also tell you, when my kids start to write speeches, I don't like to label them as being an OO or info. I like to see where their writing takes them. And then once I see where they're going with it, probably about halfway through the process, we determine whether it's an OO or an informative. We kind of go from there. If it's leaning more toward teaching, we go to info. If it's more moving someone to action, we typically go OO. But I think those 2 do go hand in hand.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Okay, we're after the 3 o'clock hour, and I know we have some NSDA meetings coming up. Again, feel free to email me at any time, especially with rules questions. I actually am really probably more than I should be into the rules. I love how those work and how we have those to kind of guide us. I'm happy to guide you any way possible with those. So, and show you where they are and help you out.
Thank you so much, Chad. I will definitely email you because I kind of get into the nuances and I just want to make sure that I'm leading the kids in the right direction and along the right
We're of
path.
the same ilk.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you again. I want to thank the everybody for being involved. Kevin, thank you again, and Michael for your input. Thank you, Dakota, you as well, and best of luck on whatever this season may bring.
Thank
Chad,
you.
I'm so sorry. Can I ask a question real quick?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you so much. So the ones that they can double with, they can do one extemp, and my kids will probably want to do extemp, but they've always done like extemp and info. They can also do OO, but I didn't catch that third one that they could do as well.
Impromptu. So if someone's an extemp, they can do OO, informative, and impromptu.
Okay, that's good. And then also, is there a place that I could go to view the rules on everything? Like if I wanted to look at the rules and then also possibly like see an event. So for instance, I have a couple of students that are showing interest in Congress. I have no idea how to do that at all.
I didn't either, and I luckily had other coaches that helped me out. I'm going to share my screen, so just give me a second.
Thank you so much.
Of course, I people did it for me too. I'm happy I get a chance to pay it forward. So, okay, my screen should have just come up.
Okay.
So this is the IHSFA website. It just got a facelift this summer. It looks a lot better, let me tell you. They did a great job before. It just looks better now. The rules portion is the first thing I'm going to show you. If you go under info and click on rules, you'll want to look at the tournament manual. The Constitution is more about the organization and what we do and how that happens. That's not going to help you that much. The tournament manual is the best thing to look at. The problem is the tournament manual there's a lot. I think it's about 50 some pages. So that's a lot to go through, but that's probably a good first step if you have any specific rules that you want to check on. But if you're asking about just like how to do Congress, I'd go into resources.
Resources.
And if you click under debate, I've not looked for Congress yet. I should have been under there. Well, I'm just going to type Congress into search and see what happens. Yep, that would be under debate. Okay, so forgive me for that. I just wanted to be certain before I misled you. Go to resources. Go to debate. And debate events, current topics. You should see the Congress stuff listed here is what I'm guessing. But if your kids want to do Congress, there are coaches in the state you may want to reach out to. Which sectional are you in again?
Kevin, but gosh, I bother Kevin for everything, you know.
I would talk to Chris Lowry.
Chris Lowry, okay, yeah.
Because he is one of the gurus on Congress.
Now, if I just have one student that wanted to participate, would they be okay? I mean, or do they need like a bigger group?
I only have one kid on my team that does Congress.
Okay.
And he does fine. And because I think of the universal feel, the communal feel we have, he's made friends with the other schools. Michael Yakey, who was on here, his kids do very well in Congress. I feel like he sends kids to nationals every year in Congress. I believe his email was sent earlier. I'll admit I'm not an expert on Congress by any means. I do more of the speech side. But Michael would be a great resource.
See, I don't even know enough to help them in terms of, I don't even know the layout. You know, like everything else I can kind of look and see, okay, well, this is 7 minutes or this is 3 minutes type of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't even know the layout of how Congress even looks. So I guess I feel kind of lost that way, that I wish there was like a video I could watch or the rules that, hey, we start out this way and then this is what happens. And, you know, you have to prepare for these 14 bills or these 5 bills. You know, and have a 3-minute speech. I mean, I hear these things, but I don't know enough to like piece them together. Right now I'm like in a Faulkner novel, and I want to like, I just like, okay. And then,
No, I get it. I love the Faulkner reference, by the way, too. The string of consciousness. I feel absolutely that's a great comparison to Congress. I don't know a lot about it. The one kid I've had in it, like I said, I would contact other coaches. They'd send me some materials. I would work with him and kind of do it. But I feel like I acted like more of a liaison when I was coaching Congress than an actual coach. And that's why I think I would actually suggest Michael over Chris, because Michael has some great resources to share. He could probably find a better way to explain the rules more succinctly than I can. I can tell you right now, I plan to talk today about having better resources for Congress on our website, as I'm looking at our website right now. I'm looking at it again, trying to find any succinct explanation of Congress, and I'm not finding it. So I would suggest the best answer I can give you would be contacting Michael. And then if I can get any other resources, can I get your email? And if I find anything, I can certainly send those your way.
We practice sometimes with Bishop Noel, so I'm so thankful for Kevin. He's been so amazing to us that I would not have made it as a first year coach. I wouldn't have made it at all without him. So I'm so thankful for him, But I don't want to use him as a resource, but I don't want to bug him for everything. It's like, Kevin, it's like, but yeah, I started everything at the school myself and just not knowing anything. And it's, I love it. I'm very happy and thankful, but it's been very overwhelming,
I completely appreciate that. And I think that's where those other resources come in. It was Congress where I actually got 2 coaches from another school to come over to help me out. And I think that's the universal experience for all of us. And what Kevin's doing for you, someone did for Kevin once. And before that, a coach did for the, we're all helping each other out. And I think what I do worry about is those schools that don't have those resources, that don't have another coach to reach out to. I think that's why we all try to, make sure we do have those contacts, make sure that people have our emails, they can reach out, because if you don't have that, it's the anxiety you feel is palpable, and we appreciate that. We're trying to reduce that as much as possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I put my email in the chat, so hopefully you have it. And yep. I'm Christine Weatherby. It starts with an M. My first name is Mabel. I don't like to tell people that though. So
I get it. No, you're fine. And you're in Chicago, right?
Yeah, East Chicago.
Perfect. Yep, I put that down on my email list already. So I'm going to do some research for you, and hopefully I can send you something good. And again, Michael would be a great source to reach out to as well.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day.
You as well. Thank you.